Good morning, everybody. And let's talk about something big going on. Well, a lot of things big going on. Have you all been keeping up with the Hunter Biden, the Hunter Biden extravaganza, where his lawyers or his legal team tried tricking the judge into getting rid of evidence, and he got caught. And it turns out that within the information that was handed over to the judge within the plea deal, and the judge apparently hadn't seen it yet, there was a little clause that would have given Hunter like full blown immunity, and the judge found it and didn't give it to him. Things are imploding in fantastic ways right now, and it's entertaining to watch, and we're all here to watch it together. As this happens, I'll show that to you in the episode following this, so stick around for that. We also have something else happening right now, which, do you remember when I said, several months ago, that part of Donald Trump's plan for 2024 was to engage in all of the normally illegal things that had been legalized through underhanded means that changed the elections in 2020. Well, former President Donald Trump and the entire Republican Party have launched a brand new initiative to begin early voting and ballot harvesting for 2024. And this is really important because these are the two things that were, I think, on the legal side, slated as having flipped the election. If you remember last time, Republicans were refusing to get involved in these types of behaviors. Republicans were trying to challenge these legally because the Democrats had legalized this stuff across the U.S. through very tricky legal gymnastics, let's call it. And rather than engage in it, they tried challenging it. This time they're going along with it, and they're using it. Let me show you this. We'll start with Daily Caller. It says Trump endorses RNC, the Republican National Committee, early voting and ballot harvesting strategy for 2024. It says former President Donald Trump has endorsed the Republican Party's new election strategy that seeks to turn out voters early, including provisions for early voting and ballot harvesting. The RNC launched the Bank Your Vote campaign on June 8th to encourage Republicans to vote before Election Day, which includes efforts to increase absentee voting, early in-person voting, and ballot harvesting. Woo! Where absentee votes are collected en masse and deposited at election offices. It says in states where the practice is legal, because it's not legal everywhere, because it's normally illegal. And Democrats made it legal in a lot of places. And so Republicans are going to start using those formerly illegal practices that have now been made legal to the full extent of the law. It says Trump endorsed the strategy in a video published on Wednesday. I'll show you that in a minute. Let me actually jump into it. So former President Donald Trump, this is actually the Republican Twitter account, the GOP. Former President Donald Trump wants you, like Uncle Sam, to bank your vote. We all must do our part to defeat the Democrats. This is the Republican Party. Let me play the video. I'll just play a little bit of it so you can see what Trump is saying here.
The RNC is leading the fight to help secure your vote in 2024 as well. They're fighting bad Democrat laws, putting folks on the ground to serve as poll workers and poll watchers, and engaging attorneys to monitor every step of the voting process. Go to...
I won't play the rest because he just repeats the website over and over again. Bankyourvote.com, bankyourvote.com. He just keeps repeating it. Yeah, you can expect the Democrats to do the same thing. The funny thing is all the leftist media, they're like, how dare the Republicans? They said this was unethical. They were against it. Yes, it's okay if we do it, but they said that they didn't like it. So how dare they do what we do? It's like across the establishment media. That's the narrative they're pushing out. Let me show you one more video on this. This is Chairwoman McDaniel, RNC. Let me play 40 seconds. I'll start at here.
To win close elections, we need to close the gap on pre-election day voting. That's why we're launching the Bank Your Vote initiative. Bank Your Vote encourages, educates, and activates Republican voters on when, where, and how to cast their ballot before Election Day. We made great strides in getting Republicans to cast their votes before Election Day in 2022, but now We must encourage more of our voters to request ballots or vote early in person. And we can't do that without you. Please spread the word about bankyourvote.com to your friends and
stop it
family.
here.
Tell them to go.
Actually, they just keep repeating now the thing. They're trying to really push this really hard. There's a few important things with this. I know a lot of Republicans were like, "Oh, what chance do we have in 2024?" Don't get me wrong. I totally understand. And if you remember, I think I was pretty disheartened too, to be honest. I think everybody is questioning the integrity of the systems right now. Let's just say. And a lot of people were pointing out ballot harvesting, early voting, where are the poll watchers, what's being done. Republicans are well aware of these things, and so they're launching a full-scale operation. This is the RNC, this is the GOP, this is Trump, all working together, interestingly. It's interesting, too, that they actually had Trump being like the front runner of backing it through the official RNC, suggesting the RNC, Republican National Committee, is pretty much getting, it looks like they understand that Trump is probably going to be their candidate. Let's just be realistic, right? I think he's ahead in the polls another 10 points now over DeSantis. There's no other Republican, unless unless Trump does something really terrible, he's not going to lose it. But look, what can he do? How many indictments is he facing? How many crazy charges is he facing? And voters aren't abandoning him. I don't think there's anything at this point that can pull him down from the lead among Republicans. So the RNC, the GOP, Republican, main bodies, and Trump are working together on this initiative. A lot of you have asked, well, what about the other things? You'd have to do a whole lot to get everything in line. We're on YouTube, so I can't talk about everything, unfortunately. But we will jump over to Epoch TV in a sec. Real quick, did y'all see my Barbie video? I should note, the thumbnail and the headline I did not write. Actually, I disagree with those. I do think the movie is a bit woke. I think it is woke. And actually, I think that a lot of people were right about the movie. But I give my own take, which is I'm more proposing subverting the discussion on feminism, to talk more about traditional values of women, which is, I think, where this discussion needs to go. I kind of debate with myself about getting involved in cultural discussions, but I've been feeling more and more like I should. And I'll tell you why. Normally with movies, I kind of feel like I'm engaging in the the allegory of the cave, where Plato talks about how people are in the cave and they're watching shadows on the wall. And their entire world and analysis is based on trying to predict the shadows and interpret the meaning of the shadows and so on. And as a person begins awakening, they start seeing that there's little hands and little puppets that are creating, the casting the shadows. And if they can leave the cave, they find the world is a much bigger, brighter place. Normally, I feel like when people discuss entertainment, it's like discussing the shadows on the cave wall. And I tend to not like doing it normally, but I've been thinking about it. I was talking to some of my colleagues. The reality is these things do actually shape our culture. This is where you get into the discussions of what you call the mythos. It's the discussions and debates that form the symbolic interpretation through which we interpret the meaning of different things, and those meanings then begin shaping the values and culture of a society. If we disengage from the discussion on culture, you let it be controlled by somebody else. If you watch my video, I more actually give a criticism of feminism, modern feminism. I think feminism is making women miserable because it's creating too many conflicting narratives. And it gets confused as well with traditional femininity, which actually I think is very good. And so I think if we can broaden the horizon a bit on this discussion, which I do in the video, and talk more about, women's statementhood, for example, and traditional views of, the role of women in society, in roles of power, actually. You can actually subvert the discussion and talk about things of actual value to society. I think if you watch, yeah, it makes women mean. It makes men miserable too. It's, you know, I had a discussion with my daughter again last night. She's only 13, but she's a very smart kid, and we were talking. She's all into these like ancient histories right now. She's reading. She's very into like ancient Egypt for some reason. But we were talking about women's statementhood and a lot of the traditional women who were very feminine actually and knew how to use the power of femininity. But were also in positions of power and actually were really good leaders, some of whom ruled for like 20 or more years. And we were talking about the difference between feminism and that. Feminism being the hatred among the sexes and the conflict among the sexes, something that makes women miserable and men miserable. And I think goes against the inner nature of women. It's funny, actually, when I was in school, so funny story, I accidentally took a feminist class. And I wrote my final paper in a feminist class because they went by name in terms of which classes you could take. And by the time it got to P, you know, mine and Philip, right? There were only like 3 classes left, and one of them was women in art and history. I was like, I'll take an art class. You know, it turned out to be a full-blown, you know, why men are evil class. You know, I wrote my final paper on the angle that feminism was actually an anti-women's movement, that it demonized traditional feminine virtues, and ironically told women that they should be more like men, while basically saying men were evil for denying that to women. And I think if we can begin discussing that while promoting actually traditional femininity, in the very positive ways that it does represent itself, you can change the discussion. And I would argue as well, like a lot of the macho man type stuff, I consider a lot of those guys what I call them man babies. You know, it's the harsh man is often a petty man. You know, and hear me out. The harsh man, the guy who, you know, defends every slight thing and stuff like that, is usually a petty man. It's pettiness, not strength. I believe that a strong man has great forbearance, the ability to endure hardship. I've had some fantastic mentors in my life. I actually had a mentor who was a wandering monk for a good while. Actually, it really changed my life, to be honest. One of the things he taught me was that the reason men are strong, the reason you are strong, is an act of compassion for others. You become like an anchor or like a tree that others feel safe around. The strength of men is an act of compassion. It's actually out of kindness, not out of selfishness. People feel safe and calm when they're around a true man. And I think if a person can cultivate that type of strength, while maintaining actually, you know, kind of a light demeanor on the outside, which I would say is actually an expression of true strength. It's not a dark and glum and, you know, petty type strength. It's I think true strength has a lightness to it. You'll find that people feel safe and calm when they're in your presence. And so I'm more on these types of things when it comes to the discussions on, you know, men and women, I guess. Real quick, too, before we jump over to YouTube, any women looking for some good books? My wife is very into traditional femininity. She's notably the editor of our American Essence magazine. She's the chief editor, in fact, if you haven't seen it. Epoch Times does this magazine, American Essence. Subscribe to it. It's fantastic. She's the chief editor. She's very much into the ideas of traditional femininity. 2 good books that really helped her, by the way. One of them is called Fascinating Womanhood. For her, she says it's one of the best books she's ever read on traditional feminine virtues, overcoming feminism. The other one that helped her a lot too in marriage is called The Alpha Woman's Guide to Love and Marriage. Those 2 books she swears by. And I'm also very much into, I would say, ancient virtues of men. I'm more into the lessons of the sage kings and stuff like that. I actually, I always say I want to write a book, but I would love to write a book about this stuff one of these days. The virtues of the sage kings and the lessons we can learn from them. That said, let's jump over to Epoch TV and we'll continue our discussion. And I want to talk to you about how the Supreme Court is being called on to stop the tyranny of the administrative state. I'll see you on Epoch TV, and we'll continue the discussion and do the Q&A. Also, real quick, we have a flash sale going on right now, so anyone who wants a subscription to Epoch TV, you can get one very cheap. So jump over now, and I will see you there.